Thank you. They always leave the best to last, isn't that what they say? So whilst Canada Nickel might be one of the few good TSX investments, we believe it's probably not the only one. But Mark's done a good job on the nickel market. So to take you through, for those of you who are new to Horizonte, a summary, a snapshot of the company. We're a nickel-focused company in Brazil. We've got 2 Tier 1 nickel projects, both 100% owned. The Araguaia Project, which is focused on the stainless steel market, so that's ferronickel product, with robust economics around that project. That's advanced. We've published the feasibility study, we've got the construction license, and we've got an Orion royalty deal on that, which I'll walk you through later. And the Vermelho Nickel Cobalt project, which is aimed at the EV battery market, nickel in sulfate, cobalt in sulfate, and we've just released a pre-feasibility study on that. So this slide just shows you the region where we are in Brazil. We're in the Pará state in the north of Brazil. And this shows the efficiencies between the 2 projects. There's about 85 kilometres between the north and the south. In the south, in the blue, we have the Araguaia, the ferronickel project, with the ability to produce 29,000 tonnes per annum of nickel in stages 1 and 2. And the Vermelho project in the north with the ability to produce 24,000 tonnes of nickel per annum in sulfate. So combined, that makes about 50,000 tonnes per annum. And if comes into production, that would put Horizonte about 7th or 8th globally as a global nickel producer, which is pretty competitive. And this just shows how we've built our resources over the years. So over the last 7 years, we've increased our resource base by 800%. That's through our own grassroots discovery, followed by acquisitions of Teck, Glencore, and Vale, all within the same regions. So I won't bore you on the nickel market, as I'm sure you're already very well versed, but just a quick snapshot. LME stocks at their lowest levels in the last 7 years. Demand is outstripping supply, not only on the EV side, but also on the stainless. So stainless is growing 5% year on year globally. And of course, the Indonesian ban coming into effect. Indonesia likes to play yo-yo with nickel export policies, but that's potentially going to result in a 200,000 tonnes per annum shortfall. There is a high cost to entry for nickel projects. So there have been very few Tier 1 nickel project or greenfield nickel projects coming online, greenfield nickel projects being developed, and it takes about 8 to 10 years to take a project from exploration through to production. So the short story here is that there are few nickel projects that are ready to come online by 2022, 2023, when we see that nickel price really coming into effect. So stainless is still the main dominator today, with about 70% of nickel demand going into stainless. We expect that will reduce to about 46% in 2030. It will still be the number 1 consumer of nickel. But batteries, as you know, is going to grow from about 3% up to 37%. So that's a significant growth market there. And nickel is the fastest growing raw battery material. So it's growing about 30 to 40% year on year. And that's mainly due to the NMC battery becoming the new nickel market standard, and that's about 80% of nickel in that battery. So here is a picture of the Araguaia trial mining phase. That's our main deposit, the Pequizero deposit. That's a beautiful green field now. We have covered that back up. And a quick snapshot of the economics. So when we published the feasibility study of Araguaia, we published this at a base case of $14,000 a tonne. The nickel prices range between $15,000 to $18,000 in the last couple of months. If we use the consensus nickel price, this project gives us a $2.4 billion cash flow after payback of capital, over 27% IRR, and almost 700 million NPV. When you put in the second phase of development, so if we fund that through our cash flow, not through upfront capex, those economics improve significantly. So it's a really cash generative project, with really compelling economics. And the study has already been designed for a phase 2 expansion, as you can see in this blue area here. So we have the ability to expand quite easily. What makes Araguaia unique in this context is that it is construction ready. So we have our environmental permits, we've got our water permits, we've built the project throughout to IFC standards as well as Brazilian standards. And we've got multiple years of community engagement. It's also located in a farming area, no indigenous reserves and no forest reserves. So from a risk perspective, that makes the project a lower risk. And just a summary on the Orion royalty. So we were very pleased to announce that royalty closure a couple of months ago, $25 million. For a 2.25% royalty on the Araguaia Project. That applies to the Stage 1 Feasibility Study, so not the Stage 2 Feasibility Study. And as you all know, Orion is a big company with about $5 billion under management. So we see Orion as a strategic partner going forwards into the funding for the next round. And where are we on the funding? We've obviously closed the Orion royalty deal. We're now in conversations with about 7 banks, both international and Brazilian, and we're looking at releasing some information on the syndicate of the banks into Q1 next year, with the finance being complete around the end of H1 next year, going into construction. So this is the Vermelho Project. We released a pre-feasibility study results in October. The Nickel Cobalt Project. We estimate that Vale spent about $200 million on this project, and we acquired it for about $8 million, right when the nickel price was at its lows. And what makes this project very economic is the feed grade. So the beneficiated feed grade is about 1.5% nickel, and that's a huge multiplier on your economics. This is a really cash generative project, so about 7.3 billion cash flow after payback of capital, and that's after that's at $16,400 a tonne of nickel as well. We're looking at producing 24,000 tonnes of nickel in sulphate per annum on average, 1,300 tonnes of cobalt in sulphate. In addition, it's got a fertiliser byproduct, no wet tailings, which in Brazil is important at the moment. And this is located right in the Carajás district, so very well developed infrastructure. The key here in this slide is just to show the economics. We have this on our website, so you can plug in your own nickel price and generate your own economics depending on what your nickel price flavour of the day is. But if we use the Wood Mac nickel price of $19,800 a tonne, you can see that the economics there are incredibly compelling. So about $9.5 billion in net cash flow, over 31% IRR, and over $2 billion in NPV. This is a pretty standard graph in terms of stocking, plotting grade and resource. And I imagine you'll recognise quite a few of those projects there, like Cleantech. So if we take Cleantech's Sunrise project, it's about 500,000 tonnes of nickel. Vermelho has 1.6 million tonnes of nickel in resource, and it's also very high grade. It also has a significant cobalt resource, and obviously we optimise the project for the nickel. So we're advancing well along the development pathway for Vermelho, and we're looking for partners. We're looking for strategic partners, potentially people with HPAL experience or battery experience. So coming to the end now, this is just a quick snapshot of where our projects sit in the global cost curve. Laterites are actually outperforming sulfides in terms of operating costs. So they have been over the last 3 years. And both Araguaia and Vermelho are well positioned in the lowest quartile of the cost curve. So in summary, direct exposure to nickel. The combined economics of both the projects are about $2.5 billion NPV. We're well funded. We've got $30 million in the bank. in a region that has got extremely good infrastructure because it's a mining region, and the projects are scalable, which could bring us up to 50,000 tonnes per annum of nickel production. We're also backed by a strong institutional shareholder base, including Teck, Glencore, and JP Morgan, with Alexander Christopher on the board, the COO of Teck, and so we're well positioned to take this forward to the next stage. Thanks very much.